Welcome everyone to week 3. I hope you had a great Memorial Day holiday. I did, just hanging out with the family, playing softball. I'm really excited to get started on this week. I've already read through your thought papers for the week and your introductions to your wikis. And before I get too far with things, I wanted to talk about wikis for a minute. I really enjoyed looking at your introductions. I think you've got some great topics that you're going to talk about. And I'm including here on the video, and I'll include this on Blackboard as well, a list of the topics that you guys have selected. Because I want you to look at each other's wikis, comment on them, maybe even help add to the content. To understand wikis, let's go to the wiki that we all know, Wikipedia. I'm sure we're all familiar with how Wikipedia works. We understand that it's an online encyclopedia created by its members and its audience. But did you know that Wikipedia has 5 pillars? 5 kind of founding rules that everyone needs to follow. And the pillars are as follows. The first is Wikipedia as an encyclopedia. This is something I want you to kind of remember for your wikis. Wikipedia has a neutral point of view. And what I want you to do on your wikis is to present information on the topics that you've selected, with a goal in mind of creating and starting discussion. Now that doesn't mean you can't have any opinion. Third, Wikipedia is free content. I think that's something that we understand as well. You may not have known that Wikipedia has a code of conduct, but I like the last one. You know, Wikipedia does not have firm rules. They want to encourage this kind of discussion that we're talking about. As I kind of highlighted there below, Wikipedia asks its editors to be bold in editing, moving, and modifying articles. 3 of the key elements that the original creator of the wiki space developed are these 3 things. The wikis should be open to all. I think we read about last week the importance of involving as much of the audience as possible to tap into that cognitive surplus that Shirky talks about. Second, a wiki is always interconnected. Means it's, that's one of the reasons why I'm asking you to have so many hyperlinks. Because I want you to connect with other wikis. I want you to connect with your own wiki. I want you to show connections between things and not just, here's a page about X, here's a page about Y. Finally, a wiki is never complete. One of the things that I saw as I was looking through your introductions, some of you were talking about doing a survey, which I think is a great idea. But let's call it a poll rather than a survey, because a survey seems like it has a finite end. You talk to 100 people, you're done. Wikis never have ends. They're never complete. They exist as a repository of knowledge that we continually add to and change and adapt. So a poll is more appropriate because it shows what the sentiment or the public opinion is at the time, but it could change. And it always invites new people to add to the polls. So in looking at your thought papers for this week, a couple of themes emerged that I wanted to go over to give you kind of an overview of what the readings meant. First off, a lot of you talked about convergence, and it still seemed to me like you are stuck in the idea that convergence means lots of media together. I think Jenkins makes it pretty clear that convergence is a lot more than that. Convergence is actually an attitude among the audience to want to bring the things together, to act on their own to bring things together. It's not just journalists doing video and writing stories at the same time. And I thought one of you had a really interesting take on this in your thought paper. As a reporter, when I live tweeted, blogged, and wrote for a site, I would also check email and online conversations to see if there was someone with a perspective or additional information that would help my story. I considered this a selfish act because experts can come from anywhere. However, not enough reporters think this way. Media members have to understand technology to make the best use of it. Second, a lot of you talked about the role of journalists. How do journalists interact with citizens? And how do they make the most of this process? It is important for citizen journalists to understand the responsibility to provide new, valid, and reliable information to the Knowledge Portal in order to be considered as effective citizen journalists. This statement really puts that burden onto the audience, and I think they should accept some of that responsibility. Most citizen journalists are going to rise organically. They're just going to do it because they get a bug and they say, this story needs to be covered and I'm going to write about something. It's not something that someone that we're going to be able to count on as a reporter forever and ever. It's probably someone who doesn't even want to be a reporter. Or they would have gone to graduate school or undergraduate school in journalism like you guys did. But for that instance, they can be really helpful if we as journalists make sure that we apply our training and knowledge to it. And some of the other quotes from the papers that I wanted to highlight emphasize that as well. Although scholars hold different opinions and expectations about the power of participation, the underlying agreement is that one could never overlook the potential of the new generation of the internet-empowered audience. Plus, I think we should boost the audience's confidence as much as possible, even by being a little over-optimistic. Emotional engagement is also critical when it comes to the post-industrial area, where people like everything more human. The popularity of handmade products and relatable and non-pretentious celebrities attest to the desire of such connection. Finally, you talked about how the rules have changed and how it's really important for journalists to understand that and also to apply those rules. The digital age is like taking the good with the bad. I can control what I put out there, but that doesn't mean I should be posting it. That should be a rule of thumb written in the dorms and the sorority and fraternity houses here at Ohio University. Being coined a journalist still comes with a sense of credibility, and although anyone can produce news nowadays, being associated with the profession gives you a needed leg up on ordinary citizens. What I liked about this quote is that it doesn't say that journalists are better, it just says they have a leg up. And I would say they even have more responsibility to ensure those practices are maintained. Doesn't mean excluding, as we already heard before, we need to take advantage of the power of the audience, but we still need to apply our journalistic principles. I think the most important factor that will come into play with participatory journalism is whether the people who are participating are taking care of each other. If you spend any time looking at discussion boards and online communities, you really see this is what keeps people coming back. They feel like they're valued. They feel like other people are looking out for them. They feel really like they have a sense of community and some friends in this site. And I lied, there's one more quote, but I think this was a good bookend for the discussion this week. Whether we're ready or not, though, the internet and its users have built up a momentum toward freedom of information. The sooner we learn to accept that and use it for the good of society, the better off we'll be. I always like to end on an optimistic note like that. To wrap up then, let's look at the readings for this week. You're already familiar with convergence culture because you read the introduction last week. This week you're looking at 2 examples. I will warn you, he gets a little bit long. You could probably just read the first half of both of these chapters to get the essential points. But if you're interested in Survivor or reality television or Star Wars fan culture, then go ahead and read the whole chapter. Next, we're also reading this book from Jeff Jarvis, Public Parts. Jeff Jarvis was the founding editor of Entertainment Weekly magazine. He was a traditional journalist before he saw the power of the internet really early on. And he left his kind of cushy traditional journalist career to really become a prophet for the potential of the online audience and the online networks. In this book, he talks a lot about how that digital shift was made and how communities are formed online. He even calls the internet more influential than the printing press will ever have been. You're reading something that I've written where I kind of try to define in this book what it means to create a community online and how journalists are involved. Finally, this is another new book that I just added to the class this semester, but I'm really kind of excited about it. Dan Kennedy writes about what he calls the Wired City, and it's all about community journalism and how they're adapting to online. Thanks for all you do. Continue working on the discussion board and posting your interesting findings there. Make sure you're submitting something for rough drafts, whether it's completed or not. And have a great week. Thanks.